It's been a very interesting week, especially for Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. It seems he's really dug in his heels when it comes to the charges he made against India for quote-unquote carrying out assassinations on Canadian soil. After first making those charges, he reiterated them on the sidelines of the UNGA, but with a caveat. They're all based on credible reasons, credible allegations, but no credible evidence. Maybe that's the reason why so far even allies of his country have been wary at best while responding to his claims. The farthest they have gone is to say that they are worried or concerned. So where does that leave Mr. Trudeau? Well, to put it crudely, pretty much in a hole and digging away quite furiously.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen.
There are credible reasons to believe that agents of the government of India were involved in the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil.
Now, remember, all members of the Five Eyes Alliance, of which Canada is a part, have said that they are deeply concerned about the claims and have asked all nations to respect the rule of law. This even as the Financial Times today reported that the US President and other world leaders expressed concern to Prime Minister Modi about what Canada is saying when they met him during the G20 summit. Separately, efforts are on to paint India as a semi-dictatorship. Some reports even compare it to Saudi Arabia, to Russia, to countries who, with impunity, carry out attacks on foreign citizens on foreign soil and violate the sovereignty of friendly nations. But when asked about this specific comparison, here is what America said on record.
We are in constant contact with our Canadian counterparts. We are consulting with them closely. We support the efforts that they are undertaking in this investigation, and we have also been in touch with the Indian government as well. India is not Russia, and China has its own set of challenges that we deal with in its own context. So, of course, there's going to be differences in how we deal with countries one by one.
The most interesting reactions, though, came from Justin Trudeau himself when he was asked specifically about why his allies choose to remain aloof. He also maintained a studied silence on the specific nature of information and evidence that he has. Yesterday, a journalist asked him a very specific question. What is the credibility? What is the source? What is the nature and what is the strength of the evidence that you have against India? All of these questions were met with a standard answer. We're a country that believes in the rule of law. Our sovereignty must be respected, and Canada has robust judicial systems.
US, UK, Australia, or New Zealand have echoed the allegations about India. We know you gave some heads up to some of those world leaders. Did you ask them to publicly condemn New Delhi?
As a country of the rule of law, we have an obligation to ensure that those processes unfold in a rigorous and independent manner, and that is what we are ensuring. At the same time, we are ensuring that Canadians stay protected and that we stand up for the international rules-based order. That is something that we are doing, and it's something we are doing alongside our allies.
But so far at this point in time, you seem to be alone in echoing these allegations. Are you concerned that Canadian allies have not gone nearly as far as you in this situation?
We're standing up for the rules-based order. We're standing up for the rule of law. We're highlighting how unacceptable it would be for any country to be involved in the killing of a citizen on their own home soil. And that's something we will continue to stand for.
Your statement in the House of Commons the other day, some of the reactions, some of the conversation's been about the quality of the evidence, how much Canada has. You said it was credible. Can I ask you to characterize it just a little bit further about how extensive it is, how solid it is, and whether you might ever share some of that with the public? So how extensive is this evidence?
I think it's extremely important that as a country with a strong and independent justice system, we allow those justice processes to unfold themselves with the utmost integrity. But I can assure you, the decision to share these allegations on the floor of the House of Commons Monday morning was not done lightly. It was done with, or Monday afternoon, was done with the utmost seriousness.
The simple questions are as follows. Has Justin Trudeau now painted himself into a corner? Is Hardeep Nijjar really the man that Mr. Trudeau wants to go down defending? With the allies remaining non-committal, is one to assume that he's pretty much left on his own? And the million-dollar question, where is the evidence? Joining us on the show, Cory Morgan, columnist with Western Standard, Chris Blackburn, international affairs commentator, and Kirk Lubimov, also a political commentator from Canada. Cory Morgan, I want to start by asking you, very interesting choice of language. Today it has become credible reasons, and earlier it was credible allegations. How credible are these reasons and allegations according to you in a court of law?
Well, until you give them, they have no credibility. It's all on the word of the Prime Minister at this point. And when he, as we refer to it in Canada, when he's backed himself into a corner, as you say, he starts uttering word salad every time somebody asks a question. He knows he's going to get in more trouble if he tries to expand on what he has started, and he just starts giving stock answers to every question that is thrown at him. He won't answer questions any longer. I mean, perhaps there's evidence, but I mean, we're beyond the point now of presenting it. We need to see it. This is very, very serious. You can't just toss allegations like that out there that's impacting millions of people now as we see visas canceled and all sorts of tension between India and Canada and not start to come forward with evidence. So it's starting to make people conclude he doesn't have the evidence. We understand there's security reasons to be discreet, but we've seen this with other countries when there have been, whether it was between Turkey and Saudi Arabia or whether it was the United Kingdom and Russia, when they've clearly found a case of foreign actions on their soil, they will call out the other nation, but they will have all of the evidence behind them before they do that. And Justin Trudeau is just making things worse by refusing to disclose what these credible reasons are, if indeed they're out there.
You know, Chris Blackburn, there was a report in the CBC today which said that the Canadian government has amassed both human and signals intelligence in a months-long investigation of a Sikh activist death that has inflamed relations with India. And this includes, according to CBC, communications involving Indian officials themselves, including Indian diplomats present in Canada. Some of it has come from the Five Eyes Alliance. So another strain of thought could be that he has it, he will present it at the right time.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for having me. I think that the CBC report is probably quite a telling report because it does say that Canada has signals intelligence. CBC, as you know, is the state broadcaster in Canada. It has strong links to obviously the government, and it has strong links to the intelligence services of Canada. So I think you're right. If we're looking at possible Canadian sort of revelations, are we going to see these signal intelligence? Are we going to get snippets? How are they going to present it to the global community? Because we have seen over the last few days credible allegations, credible evidence, but we've seen nothing. Justin Trudeau has literally opened up a can of worms here, because we already know that Canada has a very difficult situation about the rule of law. We've seen allegations, we've seen training camps in Canada. We've seen violence from Khalistanis where the Canadians haven't took it seriously. So if they're a nation of the rule of law, why haven't the Canadians taken these threats, very grave threats, seriously in the past?
So let me just ask you directly, do you believe that these signal intelligence actually exists, or is this a strategically timed leak? Chris Blackburn.
Yeah, I think the signal intelligence, as we've seen, probably does exist, but they have to present it to the global community. They have to make the case now. They've risen the bar so high, and they've made the allegations. They've got to start showing the world what evidence they have, if any. But I think that this CBC leak is very important because it shows you the direction that we're heading in. And if the Canadians think they have evidence that India was involved in the killing of Nijar, that they've got to present it.
Do you think, Cory Morgan, that America, Australia, New Zealand have actually seen the evidence, which is why the Financial Times report that President Biden actually took it up with Prime Minister Modi during G20?
If indeed they've seen this evidence that's out there, I imagine, haven't seen it to present a clear link between a government-involved assassination on Canadian soil, or they would have been speaking up a lot more loudly and clearly on it. I mean, if such an action happened, the United States, Australia, they'd be very concerned, and they would condemn it roundly and quickly, of course. So I don't believe they've seen this evidence, or they already would have been speaking up on it. As it is, they're kind of stepping off to the side and trying to keep themselves clear of this, because again, I think they know Prime Minister Trudeau well enough as well to know that he's not often clear on following through with evidence when he makes allegations on things.
The interesting thing is the choice of people that Mr. Trudeau stands to defend at this point. You've got India, a democratic country on the one hand, Kirk Lubimov, and on the other, you've got a man who can be seen in a video we've accessed now, apparently firing an arm in the British Columbia area in 2015. So here is a man whose citizenship is suspect, who is seen firing an AK-47 in British Columbia, and on the other is a country that you're accusing of his murder, India. What do you make of the choice that Justin Trudeau has made at this point, Kirk Lubimov?
Well, the issue here is a little bigger than that. So a couple of days ago, there was another member of Khalistani terrorist group that was murdered in Winnipeg. So, and the only reason we know about those two individuals in the public as wide as it is, just because they're being murdered. So the question is, how many more do we have people with, suspicious ties and backgrounds in Canada that we don't know of? So that should be probably one of the biggest questions we should be asking ourselves. And both of them came and stayed in Canada on illegal basis, and somehow had no issue being in the public eye while being in Canada illegally.
The curious thing, though, is that even the Canadian government at present is not clear on exactly when Hardeep Singh Nijjar was granted citizenship. Let's take a look at the tweets by the minister in Canada talking about his citizenship. The first tweet on the September 19 says that he became a Canadian citizen on the 3rd of March 2015. Then the same minister again goes on to say that he became a Canadian citizen in 2007. So when exactly, Mr. Morgan, did Nijjar become a Canadian citizen? Because ultimately at the core of this entire controversy is the claim he's a Canadian citizen. It's an attack on our sovereignty.
The pieces of evidence they need to clarify. Now, I think most people in looking at this realize that Mr. Nijjar was not a peaceful character. But I mean, that if he was a Canadian citizen, all the same, that changes the status. That means that we have to deal with him within Canada as Canadians. If he was getting into this much trouble or presenting such a risk prior to being a citizen, then we have to ask, well, why did we not expel this man from our country? Because we shouldn't be harboring somebody who's so potentially dangerous that we can't accept as a citizen. So it's yet one more piece. I mean, again, even if he wasn't a citizen and he was indeed assassinated by a foreign government, well, that's a very serious charge. But we don't have evidence of that either. So this should be one of the easiest things for the government to clarify. Is he a citizen or not? And when did that happen? And like everything else, we can't seem to get a clear answer out of it.
So I am genuinely confused. What is really the road ahead? Is there going to be a public displaying of evidence? Does it go to the UN? What exactly is the process from here on, Chris Blackburn? What exactly does Mr. Trudeau plan to do from here on? He's made the charges. He expects India to cooperate, by the way, but cooperate on what?
Yeah, well, I think we've already seen that the Canadians are prepared to go to their own media first. I think if we can see scenes that were like an expose in the UN could possibly potentially be the way forward. But I think the Canadians, as I've already said, the Canadians are in hot water now because the onus is on them to look at, if the global community is looking at Canada's role. Canada had, in 2010, had a massive government inquiries into the Khalistani, the bombing of Air India 182. So the Canadian government knows exactly what the Khalistanis are capable of. And then what we've seen is, basically what the Indian government's argument is, we've been providing them with evidence over the years, and basically that the Canadians have been ignoring it. So I think what we will see is like a battle between the two nations on exactly what was the problem? Why have the Canadians been dismissing the evidence? Basically, was it a government right to do an extrajudicial killing if in fact the Indian government was involved?
You know, Chris, it's an important point you bring up because there is another conversation happening parallelly, which is that when America goes after Ayman al-Zawahiri, nobody calls it a violation of a country's sovereignty. When America goes after Osama bin Laden, nobody gives the argument of violation of sovereignty, and similarly with Israel and so on and so forth. Why hold India to a different standard? Because at the end of the day, Hardeep Nijjar was somebody with an Interpol notice against him.
Yep. Nijjar was the head of the Khalistan Tiger Force, an organization which was involved in terrorism. Now, India said that the National Investigative Agency, the NIA, has amassed documents that they've given to the Canadians on his involvement. And this has been over the last sort of decade. So why have the Canadians dragged their feet on this issue? Because any other nation, whether it be Israel, the United States, if there was terror training happening in Canada and the Canadians weren't looking at the issue because of political reasons, then it gives any other country, it's a violation of another country's sovereignty, especially India. So for Justin Trudeau to say that, this attack or this killing of Nijjar was against Canadian sovereignty, you could equally make the case on the other foot.
And that's pretty evident now, because from the images that we have of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, his activities continued beyond Indian soil in Canada. If he's organizing arms training, apparently he also traveled to Pakistan while he was living in Canada. He went and met the assassin of Beyant Singh while being purportedly a Canadian citizen. Chris.
Exactly, yeah. So I mean, the NIA and the Indian government have made their case. We've heard over the last day or so, there've been sort of people within Canadian media said, oh well, the evidence wasn't strong enough. Well, what was the evidence? And I think that at the end of the day, it's going to boil down to who actually has the evidence here.
Kirk Lubimov, is it time to turn the conversation around? And when Canada argues that its sovereignty has been violated, shouldn't it also answer questions about why for the last 20 years it has repeatedly sat on requests, formal requests, not just allegations, requests given with evidence for the extradition of Indian citizens who have found shelter in Canada? What about India's sovereignty?
Well, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, Canada cannot harbor terrorism or be a safe ground to it and ignore it and then pretend it's someone else's fault. What happened inside Canada is Canada's responsibility. So we're seeing Justin Trudeau not addressing it all. We see Shubhneet Singh, who clearly has ties to it, has been silent in that as well. It would be great to see the government of Canada come out and address directly and raise concerns about such activities within Canadian borders, but they haven't done that yet. So the responsibility is just as on Canada to say, well, we have a problem here. We have to realize it. And India, which is our partner, is our friend, our ally, has raised concern for decades. And Canada hasn't answered that. So whose fault is it really at the end of the day? Canada has to step up. Canada is a young country in a sense, so we don't deal with a lot of global conflict because we haven't really, We hide behind the U.S. We have an ocean between us on 3 sides. So we haven't had to deal with global politics internally from extremism and all that for a long time. But we've been ignoring it. That is the problem. So we have to start acting like a grown-up now and really take charge of what's happening inside our borders.
You know, I'm going to ask you the final question, Cory Morgan. A lot of people in India are also wondering, would somebody who's the head of state say something like this if he did not have evidence? Do you think that people are being far too skeptical of Justin Trudeau at present, that he could still pull a rabbit out of his hat?
Well, there may be something there. I mean, you know, we're debating a negative, I guess. At this point, we haven't seen anything. But people have to understand where Canada is sitting politically right now, too. And the Prime Minister is in a very tough position. He is plummeting in the polls. He is in a weak partnership with Shubhneet Singh in order to keep his government standing. And he's known for impulsive to be blunt, stunts that sometimes he doesn't understand the consequences of what he's doing. He was desperately in need of a distraction when Parliament opened this fall, and this certainly provided a distraction from everything else he's been doing domestically. Now, again, that's pure speculation as to whether that was purposeful or not, but I don't put it beyond Prime Minister Trudeau to do something like that without evidence. Though, again, I mean, I don't know. There may be evidence there, but he'd better hurry up and present it.
Well, the most bizarre part about this entire story is that everyone right now is speculating about a probability that has been floated by the Prime Minister of Canada, no less. If he thinks that his allegations are credible, it's time that some of it would be backed by credible evidence, not just for the world, but specifically for India and its citizens. Thanks very much, gentlemen, as always, for joining us with your wisdom.